An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 110. I'm Aaron Pollier.
I'm Darlene.
Whoa, Darlene.
He tells me to speak up.
Well, yeah, you do need to speak up, but not that loud. Wow. We said last time that we're going to be doing Dracula from 1931. Now, fair enough, this is pretty early compared to our other films, but like we've talked about starting around episode 100, we said that we felt that we did need to talk about earlier films that were influential on cinema, especially science fiction and horror cinema from the 1950s and 60s. And you can't talk about the genre without going back to some of these original pieces like Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein,
King Kong,
Metropolis. We have to talk about all of them, even Nosferatu, and Nosferatu is another vampire film.
Isn't it a science?
It's silent. It's a silent film. But
and
so is Metropolis.
I got a new word that came in from media: pre-code.
Pre-code,
and I had to ask you about it.
But the thing is that we've watched pre-code movies before in this.
I just haven't seen it being announced as a pre-code.
So again. This is a podcast that is going to be a very early film. If you have not heard about Dracula, seek help.
It's from 1931 too. You have to stick in Dracula 1931.
There's lots of Dracula
or you
movies.
will get. This was adapted from the stage play of 1924 that was adapted by the novel Dracula from Bram Stoker from 1897.
And also understand, yes, it's 1931, but then you have to think about it in this one way. It's 92 years old, or 91 years old, excuse me, now when we're taping this. It's 91 years old. Like, there's going to be a 100th anniversary Dracula showing in the movie theaters at some point. Like, and you know we're going to go and see it.
But shouldn't Nosferatu be already 100 years old?
I don't know exactly when Nosferatu was released without having to look it up, and I did not do my research for Nosferatu.
So we've already had our 100 year for the.
I don't think Metropolis has been out for 100 years, but
movie.
But remember, Dracula is so early in. Oh yeah, with movies, Dracula is a very early talking picture. Most movies before Dracula, not all movies, but most movies before Dracula were silent.
And how many of these people that are playing were silent?
Well, most of them were. I mean, Bela Lugosi was big on stage before this, but I'm sure that he was in a silent movie before this. In fact, we have the first time a woman has a line in a spoken word movie. And it's the first time a woman has a line in a horror movie in this movie. And it's right at the beginning. It's when they're in the carriage. So, okay. We haven't even talked about the plot. Obviously, we always get distracted before we start talking about the plot. The point is that Dracula is incredibly influential on cinema. It's where Bela Lugosi really became famous. Bela Lugosi will now, after this, appear in hundreds of films and many science fiction pieces. He is a very charismatic man, even in his later pictures, in my opinion. He's a charming individual.
And you said he didn't blink on camera.
Yes, in this movie, he never blinks on screen.
The budget was $341,191.
Okay, and from 1931, that has to be like, I don't even know what the conversion is. That's the middle of the Depression. Well, I mean, it's the beginning of the Depression, I should say. But so that kind of budget is insane. I mean, that's probably a good.
I think it's all the sets,
You say that.
except that they reused one, and that's one of my.
Oh, they
Parts of
reused the
it.
set. Did the set look good, Darlene? Yeah.
Yeah, but you noticed that it was the same doggone.
So I don't know where the budget went. I'm not really sure because I'm not saying that the movie looked bad. It's that nothing is.
That or the ship that's going, a sailing ship with a bunch of water over.
No,
top
because
of
that's all stock footage. Oh, you didn't know that, did you?
No,
They
I
used
didn't.
footage from a silent movie.
Oh,
Yes, that's
Wow.
why it looked at like it was a different frame rate. Because they actually at the beginning during silent film era, they were still experimenting with frame rates, and the frame rate was completely different for that stock footage, so it looked sped up. And that's the point; they sped it up to actually have it the proper frame rate for this movie.
okay.
Yeah, you
something
didn't
I
even know that, did you? So yeah, no, I'm not saying the movie looks bad because it doesn't. It's freaking gorgeous, but I don't know if there's anything that stands out as being worth that much money during the Depression. Like, I know that Bela
Was
Lugosi.
the money worth less because of the Depression?
I don't know. Bela Lugosi didn't take a very large payment at all. It was a very small payment.
And he's
if I
the
remember.
top billing, isn't he?
Yeah, well, of course, it's Bela Lugosi. I mean, the man is electric on screen. So I don't want to spend too much time on the plot because the plot, it's Dracula.
It's Bram Stoker's Dracula,
It is the book.
except it's in 1930s instead of 1880s.
So I want to gloss over a lot of the plot, but we will talk about it. Okay, we begin in it's Romania, right? Or is it Hungary? It's Hungary. It's Hungary. Excuse me. And we see Renfield coming to visit Count Dracula in his castle. Villagers are trying to warn him away. Again, like I said, I'm gonna gloss over this plot very quickly.
But you do need to say that the female that spoke in the carriage
Yes,
was
the first woman that spoke on screen
but
in a
wasn't
horror
she
movie.
the director's daughter or something like
Yeah,
that?
the producer's daughter.
Yeah.
And she was actually the last woman alive that was in this movie. She lived to be 104 or something like that. Yeah, 104. She lived to be 104 years old, and she was the last living person to appear on screen in Dracula as well. So, I mean, good for her. It's interesting. So they're in Hungary. The villagers are trying to warn Renfield off of going to Castle Dracula. He's like, nope, this is my job. I'm okay. I have no problems. A woman gives him a crucifix to take up there. So Renfield goes up to Castle Dracula, and we are introduced to the Count. The Count is played by Bela Lugosi, and the Count also has, in all of these scenes that are at Castle Dracula, he has his brides. And we don't see them later on in the film because they don't come with him to England. By the way, the whole point of Renfield going to Castle Dracula is that he is leasing which abbey? It's Carfax Abbey. Carfax Abbey. He's like leasing it to go to England for some reason. We don't really know. But while they're in Castle Dracula, he has his brides, and I guess even the villagers know that his brides are there. And they are three women that are dressed in white that wake up from coffins near Count Dracula, and they kind of stalk around the castle with him.
And that turn into wolves.
Well, all the vampires in this movie can turn into either wolves or bats. Okay. Now, one of the things that you will expect to see in this movie is all of the vampire lore. The thing is, the vampire lore is not all here. Not all of the vampire lore is in this movie. We learn a few things that Dracula does have problems with.
Wolfsbane,
not garlic.
Right.
Mirrors. He does not like looking in mirrors.
Because he doesn't have a reflection.
Yes, that is because why, Darlene?
They don't have a soul.
Supposedly. Okay. He does not like crucifixes. He recoils from crucifixes.
I like Doctor Who's version of
It's
it.
if you have faith in something, it repulses the vampire. So a Soviet soldier during World War II held out his hammer and sickle, and it repels the vampires. And I'm like, that's freaking awesome. But a faithless priest can hold up his crucifix, and the vampires just kind of smile and laugh at him, and then rip him apart. Curse of Fenric, folks. Good episode of Doctor Who. It really is. Seventh Doctor Ace. Anyway, we're getting off of the subject. I guess staking does work.
Staking works. That's
There's
been in...
no threshold issues in this movie. Dracula does not need to be invited in. Dracula is coming
We
in.
had a question about that one because they did have to have windows opened.
I think it's because he's flying around as a bat, and if he turned into a person to open up the window, he'd fall to the ground because he can't just fly as a person.
Oh, shame.
Well, I think that's the point. The thing is that we never really see Count Dracula being invited into places. He just comes in, right?
Well, at least he doesn't have to say bat.
Yeah, he doesn't go, bat, and then poof into a bat like in What We Do in the Shadows. Okay, look, again, another recommendation while we're talking about Dracula. The What We Do in the Shadows TV show brings me nothing but joy. I say, turning into a bat is the easiest thing. All I do is say, bat, poof. And he goes, human form. And he turns into a human again. It's poof. It's the easiest thing. Getting off subject again. So what happens is a really cool scene where Renfield's introduced to Dracula, where Dracula walks down this rugged, kind of crumbling staircase, and he glides down it with his candelabra, and he
goes through spider web.
He moves straight through all these cobwebs and doesn't disturb them. And I said, Darlene, did you notice it? And you're like, no. And I go, watch this again and watch the cobwebs. And you're like, oh my God, the cobwebs don't move. And then he walks back up.
I am Dracula.
I am Dracula. I am saying that far too soft for most people to hear. I am Dracula. I mean, Bela Lugosi, his voice and his eyes in this.
Listen to them. The children of the night. What music they make. That's from this movie.
Oh, God. And it's so well done.
It's set in other movies.
Yeah, because it's referencing Bela Lugosi in this movie. He's freaking awesome. Also, there's changes that were made for this movie, because this is not really based on the book. This is more based on the stage play. And the stage play is fairly accurate to the book, but when Bela Lugosi, when Dracula pours Renfield wine, and Renfield's like, join me, he's like, I don't drink wine. That's not in the play or the book, I guess. And it was added in later because everyone expected that. It's so, like, memorable. I don't drink wine.
Blood is life, Renfield.
Yes.
And he gets cut by a paper clip.
He gets cut by a paper
clip. A paper cut, but he said paper clip.
And Dracula almost, like,
devours him.
Yeah, consumes him there, but he has that
crucifix.
Okay. So he's going to go to England. He has to load up boxes onto, what's the name of the ship?
3 boxes. Vesta.
It's Vesta, bound for England. And Renfield at this point has lost his mind. We kind of gloss over the whole him becoming a ghoul. And he's eating bugs and serving Dracula. And Dracula's in like 3 crates. He has like 2 crates of soil or something like that. And then his coffin. And he's slowly eating everyone on board.
Yes. So when it crashes into whatever, there's a sign. There's a newspaper.
It's like the whole crew has just disappeared, and the captain was dead, tied to the wheel of the ship,
and no blood
anywhere. But the only person left alive was Renfield, and he was committed because Renfield's like,
and they don't even know his
crazy.
name.
They know his name.
Oh, okay.
They know his name. So he's committed because he's eating animals and craving their blood.
And when they opened up the thing, he was really...
that kind of crazed laugh. The actor got typecast as a crazy person because of that. believe it
Oh,
or not.
sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. Dracula starts roaming London.
That's because he's wanting to meet his neighbors, and he finds them in the theater in London.
Yes. And he does, but he consumes a flower girl.
A flower girl, yes.
He consumes a flower girl on the way in, and he's not like totally taken with Mina in this movie. Like in the books, he's like really obsessed with her. In a lot of later movies, he's obsessed with her. In this, it's more like, I like her, she's pretty, and I'm going to make her a vampire so I have another bride. But he's not like obsessed with her.
But he doesn't do that with Lucy.
Lucy just offs.
Lucy was like, I could become Countess Dracula.
Yeah. And he does, like, he kills Lucy, but brings her back. That's why Mina keeps seeing Lucy around.
But they actually have Lucy in an auditorium.
Doing an autopsy on her, and she has no blood left in her.
And they have no blood.
Yeah. So, Dracula eats Lucy. A medical exam is performed where her body is seen that doesn't have any blood. At the sanitarium is attached to the house that Mina, her fiance, and Mina's father live at. Like
John is the fiance.
Okay, well, it's John. Why can't? Why can't I pull his name out of my? I'm so sorry.
Hacker.
Oh my lord! I have to actually pull up the page, and I can't believe I'm doing it. Harker. It's John Harker. Their house is like attached to the sanitarium,
or part of it.
Like they live,
because Renfield walks in all the time.
Renfield just is able to escape his cell continually,
and his
you know what I think it is? It's that he is a ghoul and he has like some vampire powers or something like that. That he's able to like do something. He's able to like mask his movements from people at times.
And he's always getting away with leaving, even though the guy Martin is constantly watching him.
Yeah. Like there's a guard that's always there, and
a nurse.
He's always walking right past him. Anyway, we end up finally meeting a person that is talking about what they're actually dealing with. And it's because there's some weird shenanigans going on with people being eaten, drained of blood. There's Renfield, who's acting like a crazy person
at this place.
And it turns out that this doctor is Dr. Van Helsing. Professor Van Helsing, I should say. And he is a scientist, but he's also like a folklorist. So he is a man of science that does understand that there are things in the world that are beyond current understanding, that people have made into folklore, because that's the only way we can truly deal with it. And that's what the Nosferatu are, like Dracula. Dracula's 500 years old. He's an SOB, and he has made it to England. And he also, Van Helsing understands the rules of vampires effectively. Like, if you haven't heard the name Van Helsing, again, seek help. If you're listening to this podcast and you don't know like some of these characters that we're talking, this is why I'm glossing over the plot in a lot of dialogue. Everyone knows it because this is the tale of Dracula, right? Van Helsing is the vampire hunter. And is he really a vampire hunter in this movie? Not really. He's a dude that knows about vampires and isn't really scared of them because he feels like he understands them. Can he kill them? Yes, because he understands what to do. But is he like Mr. Action Dude?
No.
Nope. He is an old man who is just kind of wandering around, and he's like, I'm going to take care of this.
With glasses that are like
Coke bottle glasses.
Coke bottle glasses. They're real thick.
And I actually think I prefer this kind of Van Helsing. I don't want Van Helsing action hero. I want Van Helsing learned professor who is not action dude, because guess what? Vampires are going to be stronger and faster than you. They can freaking fly, turn into bats. What are you going to do? You play it smart. And you don't get to be an old vampire hunter if you're all taking risks all the time. Van Helsing is smart. He makes his plans. He talks to people. And he goes, I'm not going to go and fight these vampires until it's the middle of the day.
when they're and find out where they're sleeping.
Yeah, and once I find out where they're sleeping, I'm just going to go in and stake them and be done with it.
Which
So
you now got the plot of the story.
Yeah, exactly. So like the whole point is that Dracula is slowly changing Mina.
Yes, and she's having nightmares, what she thinks is nightmares, and it's not.
But it's actually Dracula coming into a room and like draining her slowly and replacing his blood with her. Well, her blood with his. He's putting his blood into
Which
her.
is not what he did with Lucy. Lucy's walking around like a ghost.
Lucy died before he changed her, so
Yes.
she's just not really there. She comes across as one of the brides. Like the brides are just there to be there. Like Lucy. Lucy doesn't have her mind, where he's wanting to turn Mina into an actual vampire. Like rather than just a mindless ghoul. Does that make sense?
Okay,
Like the brides
but if
never
every person that he bites and drains becomes
No, I don't think that's the case. I think she died, was buried, and then Dracula went and put like a drop of his blood in her body. And then she rises.
because the whole thing is if this actually happened. Like
Yeah, the whole
if
world would
any
be vampires.
Werewolves, if they just bit somebody,
Yeah.
which they're going to bite somebody.
Everybody,
every night,
that person turns into a
the
werewolf.
plague is there.
Yeah,
And the
world's
world
done,
is already gone by the time Vlad the Impaler.
Well,
impales
remember that the whole point of I Am Legend was the author Matheson watching Dracula and going, well, what would happen if the whole world were vampires like this? And then he wrote I Am Legend. So again, going back to a movie that we've already talked about with Vincent Price, Last Man on Earth. That's the whole point, is what if everybody, what if this vampire type situation played out entirely? Like you have to eat somebody every day. And every night, that means another vampire. And then it just exponentially increases in the problem. So anyway.
Like I said, Vlad the Impaler would not be Vlad the Impaler because the whole world would have been gone by then.
Well, yeah, the whole world would have been gone. But the point is I don't think I think he purposely made Lucy into like this half
ghost.
Yeah, this kind of ghost-ish character. So anyway.
And dressed her in white.
Anyway, we have Dracula slowly changing Mina into a vampire. She doesn't want to be a vampire, but she's slowly losing her soul.
And this is why Professor Van Helsing, who analyzed Renfield's blood, was disturbed by her dreams.
Yeah, because he's like,
and used
crap.
Wolfbane to protect her against the vampires.
Now, she doesn't like the smell of Wolfbane because she has so much vampire blood in her. That, in my opinion, she comes across as being a vampire. She just hasn't killed yet. That she hasn't actually taken somebody's life and drank their blood, like human blood. That's the only reason she's still human. She's just kind of on life support. It's also why she's dreamy, and she seemingly does have, like, a psychic connection to Dracula in a way, and she's almost at the point of killing Harkin, right?
Yes. And Harkin
Harker.
is John.
I don't know why
I'm
just
going to call him John because that's what she calls him.
I've seen this movie a million times, and I always say like Harkin or I forget his name. It's awful.
John.
It's John.
John even sees the no reflection in the music box mirror and doesn't believe Helsing.
Yes.
And he's constantly antagonizing against Van Helsing.
Yeah, but Van Helsing is such a badass in this movie, and he doesn't do anything like action-y. Like, okay, you're talking up against Van Helsing, and you know that Dracula can get into people's heads. Like, there's this great scene where Dracula's like trying to control Van Helsing.
Come
to me. And Van Helsing's like, he stumbles a little bit. Like, he's starting to lose control in some parts. But it's like, Van Helsing just kind of stands there after a bit and goes, no.
And that was so well acted.
It's so well acted.
You know, the non-blinking, neither one of them blinked.
So.
And it's just like, you see him like shaking.
Like struggling against that.
Yeah, it's you're not seeing him physically shake. You're seeing the character shaking inside. and he plays it off like in his facial structures or something.
Yeah, he does it with his eyes. Like his eyes, like he widens his eyes a little bit, but he takes that step forward and then is like, nope. He gets a hold of himself and says, all effectively, screw you. I'm better than this. I'm stronger than you. And Dracula's actually impressed with him
And goes up to attack, and he pulls out
the crucifix, and but I mean, you can see that though. Again, good acting on Bela Lugosi's part. Bela Lugosi's like, damn. He plays it off as like respect to Van Helsing for being able to like stand up, because he's never had somebody really be able to withstand his mesmerism.
Yeah, and then you have this scene where Mia or whatever her name is, and
Mina.
John goes to find her. She's out on the veranda or something.
Yeah, because she had to get out of a room that's filled with wolfsbane because she can't stand the smell of it.
And she's actually talking back to Dracula, who's in a bat form
and floating above the veranda.
And she answers him and doesn't even realize she did it out loud.
Yeah.
But she's trying to ask John to get the crucifix from Professor Van Helsing.
Yeah, because Dracula wants to kill Van Helsing at this point, because he's like, nobody's gonna stand up to me. I'm gonna take this guy out.
And then the next scene, you have a shotgun go off.
Yeah, but
that was cute because it's a maid and Martin, and Martin's like, I think
I shot that bat, and Van Helsing's like, your gun's not gonna do anything.
And Martin's like, I'm the only sane. We're the only sane people, and I question you. And then he walks into the
he walks backwards holding the gun, like staring at the maid, and the maid's like, and
it just pans to dark.
That was again really well done. There's like kids being attacked by Lucy. Like they start calling her the woman in white, who's like trying to lure them in with promises of chocolate and stuff, and Lucy's like actually attacking children. And they're like, Van Helsing's like, okay, screw this. We're going to go take care of this problem. I think I know where Dracula is staying, because we know where he's staying. We've known since day one where he's staying. And it's in the basement of Carfax Abbey, right? Like the whole point is that the vampires have to stay the day in their native soil. And we know that he came with 3 boxes, and one of them had to be his coffin. So he came with like 2 boxes of native soil or whatever to hold him over. And he's renting Carfax Abbey. Let's put 2 and 2 together, right? The point is that Van Helsing's taking his time, because he generally does have time. He's not...
But he doesn't now that Mina is... Changing.
He's like, okay, we need to go take care of this. And it's not like he doesn't care that people have been hurt or killed so far. He does. It's just these like, I want to do this right. Rushing into this is going to get everybody killed. So Van Helsing says they need to stake him. Renfield escapes his room, talks about how Dracula had an army of rats outside that he saw. And like he realizes that...
No, he was gifting him a whole group of rats.
Yeah. There was like an army of rats, though. Like a swarm. And they were all like together in this red mist or something like that.
I don't understand.
Renfield's kind of crazy. Dracula says that, his blood is flowing through Mina's veins. Anyway, we end up going to Carfax Abbey.
Because Dracula takes Mina.
Yeah.
Because he hypnotized the nurse, and they go to Renfield goes to the Abbey as well,
because he's trying to like beg for eternal life from Dracula, that he served him so well.
And Dracula kills Renfield.
Well, no, Dracula lifts his butt up off the floor by his neck and throws him down the stairs. It's a really well done scene.
Because he thinks that he brought John and
Van Helsing
to the Abbey,
and he didn't. But Dracula has to go back to his coffin because the sun's rising. Like he has to go back, even though it's dark down there. The point is that he has to sleep during the day. So Van Helsing just opens up Dracula's casket and stakes his ass
with the casket.
with the casket pieces. Yeah, like
because he breaks the lid.
he breaks lids,
And
stakes Dracula.
I don't know what John is doing because I thought he went to go.
He was trying to go get Mira because Mina was
He
actually
picks
in
up
one of the. She was in one of the
metal
boxes,
piece.
right? He had to pry open something.
No, she was in a corner because he hadn't
Oh,
yet
that's right.
killed her.
So Van Helsing ends up staking Dracula. Harker leads Mina up the stairs into the light of day. The end.
And the Dracula's castle and the Abbey are the same set piece.
Yeah. So what? It looks good. Looks good. So I want to talk about what's weird in this movie, since this is like a very, very one of the very first talking movies. There's no soundtrack in this. There is some music. Like the opening credits have music, and then when they're at the London Symphony, there's music. Otherwise, there is no music in this movie. It is quiet except for dialogue. And that's very strange, but the point is that the filmmakers didn't want to put music in the movie unless it was supposed to be there, because it might confuse the audience of why there's music there, because they were so used to silent movies just having random music. So they didn't want to have music there. I'm like, this is a very different world that this movie was made in. Let's put it that way. The makeup in this movie comes across as a silent movie's makeup.
I wonder how much white face,
Like
white paint Bela Lugosi had for Dracula.
Bela Lugosi is goddamn stunning in this movie.
Now that's his hair.
That's his hair. Yeah, yeah.
He does have that widow's peak.
Darlene, there is barely any widow's peak that he has.
It has a point. I have a bear.
Come on. No, come on, Darlene. Look, here's.
I have a widow's peak.
Darlene, I'm going to pull up a picture of Bela Lugosi in character right there. There's a minor widow's peak. Darlene, you don't have a widow's peak. They emphasized it in later movies when he started getting a receding hairline or with makeup, but he barely has one here.
You see it though, and I like it.
Yeah. Bela Lugosi's costume is goddamn amazing. Do you know that the cape that he used for this was put up for auction? He was not buried in this cape. There is the rumor that he was buried in this cape. He was not. He was buried in a cape, not this cape. This cape went up for auction for like $1.2 million and didn't sell.
Did not?
No, and I'm shocked it didn't. If I had that, would I buy freaking Bela Lugosi's freaking cape?
Where would we do with it, and why would we?
Okay,
do
for
with
1.2, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy Bela Lugosi's cape. That's fair, but it got donated to a museum in the end, and I'm like, okay, that's better. Bela Lugosi's family donated to a museum. I can respect that. So there are things in this movie that I will say did not work, but I want to hear what because
I already said one using the damn same set. Really,
I thought it was fine. Come on.
I was just like, this is the same set. It's not this. It's not that we're back at Dracula's castle. It's that it's the same set.
I want to lead with going what didn't work in this movie, because there's lots of things that actually rise above the level of into the level of it did work. So the rubber bats. No, I'm serious. Out of this entire film, I think that might be my only thing that I think
you
didn't
actually
work.
seen a string in one of them.
No, I didn't notice the strings.
We
have it on Blu-ray and I didn't notice the strings. Like, they're clearly rubber bats on fishing lines. Okay. And they don't look good. They don't look good. What they probably should have done was never show bats. Just have like a shadow moving through across a window, or have the squeaking. But you don't need to have rubber bats. You don't.
They were black and white, so they didn't think they would show up that bad.
No,
and
they
probably
don't.
wouldn't.
No, they don't.
In that filmage.
And again, maybe I'm judging it from a 1950s perspective, but there are better looking bats. Yeah, they had to have had better looking bats than that.
And
like,
they had
just
to make
don't
bigger
look good.
bats because these weren't.
They were big bats. They were
bats.
supposed to be big bats. They didn't look good. That's the only gripe I have from this movie that I feel does not work.
I've seen fruit bats, which aren't they the biggest bat?
I've seen big fruit bats.
And they weren't that big.
No. Well, there are bats that big, though. That's the thing. There are bats that big.
What is the biggest bat in the world?
Darlene, without pausing the review and looking it up, I can't tell you offhand.
Okay.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to spend time doing that on a review like this. But
these were definitely
these are big
Halloween
Yeah.
rubber
yeah, these are big bats.
bats.
Is there anything? You say they reused a set. To me, that does not matter because the set looked so good.
But it confused me for a second.
Okay.
It threw me out, and I was like, what are we back in Dracula's castle? That is what went through my mind.
Okay. Is there anything else besides bats and a reused set that does not work in this movie?
Well, you're John, but he's just dressing.
What, the fiance?
Yes.
Harkin? Man, I don't know. I don't think it doesn't work. He's fine for what he is. He's the concerned fiance who's trying to save Mina. I think he does a good job with the material he has. I don't think it falls down into the level of does not work. Like there are only a few characters in this film: Dracula, Renfield, Mina, and Van Helsing. The other characters are there to support those characters. That's it. And everybody else is just a background character, including the fiance, in my opinion. Now, in some some versions of this story, there are times where Harkin is a bigger character. Sometimes you completely remove Renfield and just have Harkin in there struggling with it. And okay, fine, that's fair. It's an interesting take, but in this, I think it's fine. It doesn't.
But he could have been as good of a character as Martin.
Sure.
And Martin is even a lesser bit part.
Okay. Who's Martin?
Martin is the person that's supposed to take care of Renfield.
Okay, the guard.
It's not a guard. He's a nurse.
He's a nurse. Sure,
You're calling him a guard.
I think he's a guard because he drags around a freaking shotgun and guards Renfield. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes, he's a nurse in this insane asylum, in this sanatorium. The things that most of this movie works. So let's just try to limit what we feel works to the top here. And I'm going to say they're not matte paintings. They're actually painted on glass backgrounds that they use in camera and then film carriages moving across at the same time. Like these kind of landscape paintings that they use for Transylvania. Top notch. Like, this is clearly something that I can imagine in my head George Pell looking at a younger George Pell going, my God, these are beautiful. If I ever made movies, I want things like this in my movies. I can imagine that happening because I will still call them matte paintings. They're not. The paintings in this are gorgeous, stunning. Your turn. What are your top things that work?
Bela Lugosi's, how he just enunciates things like he's struggling with English.
But he's not. He actually knows English very well.
I know that, but it makes you think of a count from the Eastern European thing working on English when he says things, and it also gives you the creep vibe.
Oh yeah, I mean, Dracula really does come across as a giant creep. You know that they did his eyes with two little pin spotlights that they always shone right on his eyes, so they got that effect of his eyes always glowing.
A modified
Kirk light. We always call it the Kirk light, where in the original
it's
series
actually
of Star Trek,
a Bela Lugosi light.
It should be called the Bela Lugosi light because, geez, man, he is fantastic in this movie. I will say, so you just like Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi is top notch in this. That's fair. The freaking sets are stunning. My turn is that.
I still have a problem.
I love how they made all the cobwebs by just getting liquid latex and spraying it out of like a rotating drum, so it just spray out in strings, and those cobwebs look great. And Bela Lugosi just walks through them like he really is Dracula. Like, I know it's a special effect and they shot it that way, and they meant it to be like Dracula is supernatural and he's able to walk through it, but it's just so well done and subtle that you didn't get it until I pointed it out, and then you were like, "Oh, damn, that actually is creepy." Really well done, right?
Yes.
The sets, every one of the sets in this movie is so well done, even if there are like painted parts of them to make them look huge. The point is that in 1931 this looked good. These sets.
You think that some of the money is in the sets?
Yeah, they have to be. Some of the money's in the sets, some of the money is in special effects. I bet you those damn freaking rubber bats cost a good amount of money, even though they look like crap. What's your next one? What's your next one that works? I'm smacking my legs. I still have like 2 or 3.
Well, I'll always say Dracula is a great
story. Sure, absolutely.
It's a classic.
My next one, Romanian freaking villagers speaking in Romanian, like or Hungarian. I'm sorry,
it's Hungarian.
It's Hungarian. Like they're just
they're dressed in the costumes of that
of like the Transylvania area, but they're speaking Hungarian. I think it is supposed to be Hungary, but I love the fact that this is one of the first speaking motion pictures. It's not a silent movie, and like the first part of the movie, there's people just not speaking English; they're speaking Hungarian. Like,
well, they do say in the thing that the language spoke is English and Hungarian.
And Hungarian. There's only and Darlene. There's the Spanish Dracula that was filmed at the exact same time. We do need to mention that might be part of the budget. Oh, now that I think about it, because they filmed Spanish Dracula at the exact same time, using the exact same sets and the exact same film equipment. They just had Spanish-speaking actors.
Oh, and this is
so this is
75 minutes, but some of
there's rumors. I read about this. Okay,
so they had to take certain parts out of
because
it.
It was too much. Like, it was too weird for even 1931. When you think, well, I mean, it's 1931. In 1950s, they were screaming about freaking sheep's brains, right? Have we even talked about that yet? Oh my God, am I giving you a
Yeah, you just flipped that one.
Did I give a spoiler for our next episode? Oh, yes. No, I did not. No, that was we talked about that the last time, because episode 111 is Attack of the Puppet. 111 is the Attack of the Puppet People. So anyway, we're taping things like we're taping a whole bunch of episodes together here for everybody. So yeah, next episode is Attack of the Puppet People, folks. But yeah. In the last episode 109, they were freaking out. Hammer Films had sheep brains, right? And people were freaking out.
No, that was a Revenge of the Frankenstein that had
109.
Yeah.
The last episode we did, 109, had sheep's brains. They freaked out about that, and that's 1958. 1931, I'm sure that they freaked out with a woman showing too much ankle. That could have been a problem, and it needed to be edited out. Or maybe there was the hint of a hint of cleavage, and that was just too much for delicate sensibilities.
Yet the 20s was horrible.
Well, yeah, but sure, fair enough. But it wasn't a talkie, Darlene. Those were all silent films that had those flapper girls. This was a talkie. This had different standards. Who knows?
Well, it didn't have standards because it's pre-code.
Here's the thing.
Actually, 1930 is when the code started, but they weren't enforcing it.
Yeah, I know. So one of the things that I think really does come across watching this compared to like 1950s vampire movies is, in the 1950s movies, even that we've watched, it feels like we can understand some of the decisions that were made for those movies. Like, it's close enough still to our experiences that we can kind of go, okay, I get what they're trying to do here. With Dracula, even though we understand what they're trying to do because Dracula is such an iconic movie, some of the little things in this movie are confusing because 1931 truly is a different world.
Yes, it is.
It truly is different. It's pre-war. It's during the Depression. Like, this is...
Oh, there was one other thing that didn't work, was that they had a sailing ship, to me, in 1930s.
1931. So it would have been filmed in, like, let's say 1930, and there was a sailing ship, and I don't have a problem with that. Like, cheap-o sailors that are moving, like, cargo between Germany and England, why would you need, like, a motorboat? You could still be using a sail vessel and have it super cheap. You don't have to spend on fuel. Like, big deal. I don't care. There's a sailing ship. Yes, it's a nod back to the original book where all of this was far more common, but, you know, big deal. It didn't fit into the... It didn't work for me. But I'm still saying that 1931 truly was, like, a different world. Like, my grandparents were still, like, preteens.
Mine, no.
No, yours weren't. You're like, yeah, it's weird. Like, I'm the oldest of my, like, sibling group. You're the youngest of your sibling group.
And my mother was the youngest of 9.
Yeah, so it's weird that...
So I had 4 uncles in World War II. You had grandparents in World War II.
Yeah, grandparents and then great uncles and things that were in World War II. So yeah, it's weird that we're not that far apart in age, but it's our families are like different generations.
Are born in the 1880s and 90s.
But this movie was still before your mom was born.
Yes. 9 years.
Yeah, like, before. See, my dad was born in 44. Your mom was born in 40.
Yep.
So, I mean, anyway, point is that this is a really old film. And I love the vibe that it gives. And we're just kind of babbling. I'm sorry that we're just kind of talking in general here, folks, because it's Dracula. My God, of course we're going to recommend it, right?
Yes.
Like, this is a classic.
I can see them doing Dracula would be bad.
What?
I could see them doing a Dracula and being horrible with it.
And there have been remakes of Dracula that are terrible.
See?
I think there's remakes of Dracula that are questionable. And you see, I have my own opinions on this that, like, you know, I there's the weird Bram Stoker's Dracula with, like, Gary Oldman that some people love and some people hate. And I think there's some really interesting parts of that movie and there's some really bad ones, right? Dracula is Dracula. With Bela Lugosi, it is iconic. It's there because it has influenced so many films after it.
So if you don't screw up the plot, you can do something good with it.
And you need to have a guy that's double jointed and Hungarian to play Dracula. And the women, they love blood. So we can watch Ed Wood and you can get more Bela Lugosi jokes. I don't know. We love this film. It's so good. Damn it. It influences science fiction. It's worth watching. It is only 75 minutes. There's an 85-minute version supposedly that was made, but no one can find it. It, like, disappeared into the ether back in the early 30s.
Because they had to cut out 10 minutes of something.
It's too much ankle.
I don't know what it was.
Too much ankle.
I just read that there was another version of it that they put out.
And then Spanish Dracula is out there, which we haven't watched. We should watch Spanish Dracula and just, like,
Aaron.
see how good Spanish Dracula is. I know we don't need to watch it. I might watch Spanish Dracula and turn on the subtitles because I want to see Spanish Hungarian Dracula.
On that level, I think I need a drink.
No. I actually do want to see if, like, the Spanish version of, like, you know, Renfield is any different. Like, because obviously they're different actors at using the same sets, the same cameras filmed at the same time. Put it on
subtitles?
Yeah.
I'm sure
Darlene, I'm sure the dialogue is the same. What I want to see if there's, like, a different way of the actors portraying the characters, which might be interesting. Spanish Dracula better damn well be iconic, but I doubt that he is compared to Bela Lugosi. It'll just be interesting for me to watch. So anyway, I'm not going to keep everybody any longer. This is Dracula. Of course, we're going to recommend it. What a modern filmmaker can take away from it is how to make a goddamn movie. Like, this is a different world. Yes, it would be hard to take lessons for modern filmmaking from this because it's such a different world. But
fine
sets
lighting
matter,
and they still use the Kirk light crap.
Yeah.
So
Sets
yes,
are
they do.
important. Sets are important. Freaking matte paintings are important. Like, your background stuff is important. Getting actors that can emote really well is important. Like, those are the lessons. So find it in any one of the millions of versions that I'm sure are out there of how to get a hold of Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good night.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.